Welcome back to This Week in Agribusiness, where we take up a topic that we often discuss because it's so much discussed in rural communities. Ray Brownfield, who knows the land market so well, we've asked you to come in this weekend after that report from the Federal Reserve Bank of Chicago a few days ago, and it showed in 1 year's time, good farmland in Iowa jumped 28%. We've never seen anything like it, have we?
We haven't, and they said good. That didn't say excellent. So now when you go to higher quality, it may be greater than that.
Really?
It truly can be. We've seen auctions that have brought, well, in Iowa, there was a $20,000 an acre sale, and it was not developmental. It was strictly agriculture. Now, there's a reason people paid that, I'm sure, but nevertheless, you're starting to see the market bump up to those levels in some areas.
Do the accompanying or surrounding livestock operations sometimes have an effect on cropland values? By that I mean, is there the need, for example, to have more open ground around some of these operations, and that helps lift the prices?
There are some areas because they have to get rid of manure, and that's really something that benefits everybody because that benefits the farm that's getting it because that cuts their fertilizer costs. On the other hand, people have to get rid of it. So yeah, it can have a really great effect on values in some areas.
At times in the past, when I've asked you, who in the world is buying the ground, you've almost always said, well, it's basically farmers. It's neighboring farmers. It's two farmers bidding on it.
Yep.
Is that still the case?
It is, but it's two farmers certainly can be the potential buyers. But we're seeing more investors come into the marketplace that see land as a really nice long-term investment. I think they've taken some money out of the stock market from their gains and decided, hey, farmland, not a bad thing for long term. We see some 1031 money still coming from people selling commercial real estate. They say, well, mitigate capital gains taxes, let's buy some land. Land is a very popular thing right now, nationwide.
It is. And so, Ray, you mentioned that record high sale in Iowa. I know Illinois has topped the markets. What are the states that are seeing this really be exemplified right now?
I talked to a lot of people at the Realtors Land Institute, which I belong to. I know all the brokers, a lot of brokers throughout the United States, and we talk about this. Almost every state, to some degree, is seeing an increase in values and demand. It could be Texas ranches. It can be recreational property in the mountain states, people are trying to get away. It can be Minnesota, certainly doing well, Wisconsin to some degree, the South, the Delta area, Florida. It just goes on and on. Not nearly maybe the levels we are here in the Midwest, but nevertheless they're having some pretty good gains.
So, Ray, when land prices move up by this much, obviously cash rents are moving right along with them. Investors want that return. What have you heard for next season's cash rents?
Well, that's a good question because we're dealing with farm management our end as well, negotiating leases as we speak. And with the inflationary curve that's in here right now, it has people more concerned. If we'd talked about this 2 months ago, it would have been more optimistic, I suppose, the way to put it. But when you have anhydrous ammonia now going at $1,200 to $1,300 a ton from $500, that's a concern for a lot of people. On the other hand, they got great chances to forward contract their grain right now. $572 for January delivery in some cases on corn. That's not a bad for January of next year.
Yeah.
Not this year, next year. So you see all these moving parts, which creates uncertainty and a little bit of trepidation on what rents can be, but still I think they're going to go up to some degree, not sure how much.
So, Ray, we were talking on this show earlier this year about some of the concerns people had about changing tax laws looking to the future.
Right.
I know you work with a lot of folks who are looking to list farm ground as well. Is that still one of the considerations for these folks?
It is. It's a major concern of many of the families who said, maybe now's the time. The market's good. We don't want to get caught with tax issues that can be, and there are actually some people worried about it be retroactive. Don't think that's going to be the case.
But you don't think there'll be a look back on this?
I don't know. I wish I could tell you I knew for sure. I have no clue what Washington, D.C. can or will not do. But it doesn't sound like it at this point in time. But people are saying, but we're getting close to the year end. So if you're going to sell a farm today and close by year end, you better get at it because the title companies are inundated with work to do right now to close by year end. So I'm going to caution people, get at it if you're going to do it and try to get on this side of the year.
Ray, how much higher can prices run? I know you talk to growers all the time. Everybody's looking closely at their margin. You mentioned input prices are skyrocketing. Does the investor class take over as the farmland buyer in this next year, or do farmers remain competitive, do you think?
Well, Bo, I think the farmers will remain competitive because there's just differences in all of us, any business we're in. And some of the farmers are extremely good at marketing grain. We're all good at producing. But the marketing side to me is going to be the big issue. Who can do really the superior job and eke out the margin return they need to satisfy the landowner, the client, the investor at the returns they want to get. We're going to see cash rents at $400 plus in some areas, downstate I'm sure, and other in Iowa probably as well in some other parts. It depends on the area, it depends on how the drainage is. There's so many factors in that rent, how it really needs to work. Everybody needs to make money. That's the end of the day. We all want to make some money if we possibly can.
In the final seconds here, I have to ask you about that bubble. Is there a bubble? Is there a black swan out there somewhere that could just explode? And is it a risk that the farmer needs to keep in mind as he or she is planning their finances for the future?
I think there's the bubble. I don't think the bubble's in the land market, but I think you're alluding to maybe the rent issue, and that's the biggest concern I have right now. Is there a bubble? I don't think there is, but I can tell you about it in another 3 months.
We'll check back with you in 90 days. Yeah. We always appreciate your expertise, sir. Thank you so much for coming by to join us on a regular basis.
Thank you, Butch.
Ray Brownfield, Land Pro LLC is the name of the firm, joining us this weekend to talk about that topic that is always a topic, it seems, on the rural routes across the United States. What's land worth? There's more coming up here on this weekend's edition of This Week in Agribusiness.